DJI just doubled down on LiDAR tech. Guys, this changes everything. They finally gave us this cable that gives us LiDAR autofocus with any camera, with any lens, without the RS3 Pro gimbal. So if you want autofocus with anamorphic glass or vintage glass, you want that handheld look, you want to run and gun it yourself without a first AC, you can do all of that. But there's one small frustrating thing, which I'll talk about later. By the way, this is the new intern, guys. Meet Aura. It's been a lot of sleepless nights, but we're so glad she's here. Hi, cutie. Just wanted to start by saying thank you. I have been blessed to have the job that I have, to make these videos and to be home for all the important stuff. So from the bottom of my heart, thank you. Big week for DJI, the release of the LiDAR rangefinder cable hub and new wireless receiver. Both of them work in the wireless transmission kit. The cable hub meshes with the LiDAR autofocus and high brightness monitor. So when mounted to the RS3, it no longer is a one or the other scenario. Prior to this, you could either have LiDAR autofocus or you could have wireless transmission with control. Now you can have both simultaneously. So in essence, this $89 cable gives the RS3 new abilities that make it more like the Ronin 4D. So check this out. We have the RS3 built out with LiDAR autofocus and 20,000 foot wireless transmission. We have the new cable hub connecting them both, and we have my FX3 with my Canon 50mm f/0.95 Dream lens with a pre-release 1.33 anamorphic scope. Focus motor is mounted on the scope and feeding into the LiDAR. So we have autofocus with LiDAR, and if we look in the high brightness monitor, we have two new boxes that come up. Here is what the LiDAR autofocus sees. There's a tracking camera in front next to the LiDAR sensor, so we can tell where it's tracking the subject. And here we have the LiDAR depth map, which you guys might recognize from the Ronin 4D. This helps when pulling focus manually. If you've never seen this before, it's like a bird's eye view showing distances to objects. LiDAR is bouncing light off an object and then telling us the distance, and instead of looking at it this way, it's showing it this way. You see that line right there? That's where our focus mark is. This is insanely helpful for nailing focus because you can instantly tell if you are behind the focus or in front of the focus or on the money. So what's interesting here is we can toggle off autofocus on and off with this button right here. Boom. Now I have manual focus, and now it's on autofocus. So we can change the speed also. So take a look over at the yellow bar now. On setting 1, it falls behind and in front of the focus if the movement is too quick. So this would be a good setting for racking focus to like a background or a very slow moving shot. But once we kick it up to 3, which is the default setting, it's much more snappy. We can see the green area, which is my face, is right on the money pretty much all the time. 5. And once we kick it up to 5, we get a little hyper activity going on with focus. 5 is a little buggy. And in fact, this whole firmware is a little buggy. The monitor has frozen up several times over the last 2 weeks of me testing this. So hopefully DJI will fix all these firmware bugs. Other than that, I am very impressed. At first, I thought the strength of this cable was with the handheld option when not equipped with the RS3 Pro, giving LiDAR autofocus to any built-out camera rig. But for now, let's just recap what's now possible when built out with the RS3 Pro, because it really is staggering. Okay, so let's assume you have the RS3 Pro, the focus motor, the LiDAR module, cable hub, wireless transmission kit with high brightness monitor, and the Ronin 4D grips. So the rigging is straightforward. The cable hub has 5 ends. There's a 4-pin power that goes into the back of the transmitter along with a USB-C split off. Then there's a standalone USB-C that connects the focus motor, and last there's the dual USB-C port that goes in the LiDAR module. Now we have to supply power to the unit via the 12-volt D-tap power, so you'll need to have a brick. You cannot power everything here with just the RS3 battery. Next, you'll need to connect the empty USB-C port on the hub to the middle of the RS3 port with one of the RS3 USB-C cables. So now we are full-blown first AC DP mode. On the left grip, we can move the axes, left trigger recenters the gimbal, exposure button gives us one of 3 exposure tools, the inside mode button cycles through the various modes of the RS3. On the right grip, if we Bluetooth tether the camera to the RS3, those controls carry over to the monitor and the grips. I have the A7S III connected, so we have stop, start, record. We also have a Bravia sync connection that allows us to access the entire camera menu via HDMI and a virtual widget on the screen. On the grip, we have focus peaking. We also have a hidden mode button for toggling autofocus on and off, and double tapping the right trigger initiates focus tracking. So there's a ton of utility in here, and I'm very impressed, but there's two buttons that don't really do anything, and I think it's missed opportunities. Number one, we have an extra mode button here that doesn't really seem to offer anything on the screen or on the camera. And number two, the one that I'm more bummed out about, is the tracking button. You see on the Ronin 4D, this initiates the gimbal track. Even if we highlight the subject now with a yellow box and we hit this track button, it doesn't actually track me. It's tracking the focus of me across screen, my face, but it's not actually tracking my face with the gimbal. In order to do that, I'd have to hit the gimbal track button, which is only on the RS3. So now we have gimbal tracking and autofocus tracking. I think this would be better if it was on the hand grip, because then you could enable it or disable it, you know, while you're doing a car shoot or something, or while you're not physically close to the gimbal. Get on it, DJI. We want this. We want this. So the frustrating thing about this whole setup is that we've had this LiDAR focusing tech for 3 years now, and ever since I dropped the video on the RS2, this is the time of flight sensor. It's a LiDAR-based autofocus system. The number one question was, where is the standalone focus motor with LiDAR module so you can just add autofocus to any camera, handheld, without a gimbal? And we still don't really have that product from DJI. We have this product, which is way better, but also more complex and more expensive. It's a big investment, and you now need to buy the wireless transmission system to use this. So why is that? There are up-and-coming companies that are offering this tech, yet after 3 years and this feedback, DJI still doesn't want to offer this product. I think the answer is tracking, specifically facial tracking. So to test this theory out, it was time to get a real cinema camera.
This is Elliot.
Nice to meet you guys.
Elliot is in film school,
Yeah.
so we're gonna make him hold everything today.
Perfect. OHD Studios.
I actually know the people that work there. Fumbled an internship there. So
If you're in Ohio or the Midwest and you actually need some Hollywood level shit, this is the one place to do it, basically. I thought you were making a video about Hollywood quality stuff.
what? This is good. This is legit. This looks super pro.
I'm a gimbal guy.
Just because of all the peripherals that you need to get this to work right.
I spent all day rigging this. Look at this beauty. I need like one of those backpacks now. It's like way easier for me just to rig this up on the RS3 and then just lock the gimbal.
It kind of looks silly on a small camera.
So I'll save you the details for what makes building this handheld autofocus for a single operator challenging for a little bit later, and focus on what I think this autofocus system is meant for.
Did you do the internship interviews? I literally just applied and then they said that like it was full.
So he must have flopped somewhere on the lawn.
He flopped. Where did he flop? What was the question? Come on, dude.
So DJI normally has this working with their gimbals, but now they have it set up where it's handheld.
Yeah, we can definitely do that.
Now, Elvis from OHD was a very good sport letting us use their Arri 35, and it was rigging this system together that we ran into our first issue. Let's just say the 12mm rod that DJI Focus Motor uses isn't exactly industry standard, and without something like a 12mm, 15mm adapter, you're left using other means. We could probably just zip tie it. Zip tie it or gaff tape it. So this is what the little camera on here sees, and this tells us where the tracking data is. Oh, yeah. So Elvis hooked it up with some vintage Cook lenses so we could test it out with the autofocus, and gave us carte blanche to the studio. Now, it seemed a little comical giving autofocus to a $140,000 camera rig. With the mustache, you look like you're on union rate, $850 a day. If you drop this, you're fired, dude. Just saying, you're not gonna get the internship. You got it, dude, you got it.
You said I rest it up. How do I rest it up?
So the real question is, can this LiDAR tech be used on set? The biggest detractor of the wireless transmission kit in general is the latency at 70 milliseconds when compared to some more faster, more expensive kits on the market. Now, human response time for visual stimuli is between 150 and 200 milliseconds, meaning if you were holding off on the DJI transmission kit due to latency issues, even at 70 milliseconds, when equipped with LiDAR autofocus, the system is still faster than the fastest focus pullers, even with a zero latency wireless transmission, when it's set up properly. We have to measure the sensor plane here to the LiDAR plane. Anyone know how to read this? What am I at, like 11/16? And then we input the values, and that way it calibrates it perfectly. Because right now it's kind of nailing it, but then it doesn't have the focus range nailed all the way through. So after we got that measured and the correct values in the monitor, the results were much better. It's pretty good. That looks on point. And very surprising to someone like Elvis, who isn't used to seeing a fully built out cinema camera work with autofocus like it would with a Sony phase detect autofocus system. Because you normally rent out all this gear, and you guys have Cinetape, but that doesn't actually pull focus at all.
Correct.
That's just kind of helping them know, it shows them a line or something if they are in
Exactly.
focus. Obviously, it wasn't perfect all the time, but
It was close enough to be accurate. Definitely for the cine like cameras, that's pretty cool. Like seeing that technology is coming in like a 35, that's pretty insane.
Yeah.
You know, because as long as you have that monitor and you're looking through, like it did seem like it was following. Like if you're doing interviews, you know, people are going back and forth. Like that seems like a great like intentional use.
And it started raining again. Back inside. Yeah. Probably the most impressive aspect would be the updated subject tracking when there are multiple subjects in the frame. Now, in terms of tracking, I think DJI has come a long way with this LiDAR tech, but there's a few firmware issues that need to be addressed. I wish they had a zoom function in on here, because I actually can't see. Maybe if I go like this. There's no real rhyme or reason with who the tracking detects. It really just puts the white box around who it likes more at the moment. I haven't found a way to toggle between the two subjects. Yeah, in autofocus mode, turn the dial. Yep, that did it. Yep, okay, I'm an idiot, thank you. This is a touch screen, yet you don't have the ability to touch the subject that you want to focus on, and that's a huge missed opportunity. I'm not sure if it's even possible with the hardware, but that would make this whole interface a lot more user-friendly to be able to just select who you want to focus like we do on normal autofocus cameras. I will say though, when the system's calibrated correctly and the white box is around the subject, the autofocus is spot on. So DJI has nailed that, and I would say that it's elevated the LiDAR autofocus to what I'm used to seeing with the Ronin 4D, but now you have it with any size camera, any size lens. So pretty big success when rigged out with a full cinema camera and a crew. But what happens when you want to rig it out for like a solo run and gun operator? Well, there's one obvious flaw. In order for the LiDAR to work and for you to have any options, you have to mount both the transmission and the high brightness monitor receiver onto the same handheld rig. And that can present some issues. Now, rigging this cable hub and all the components together in a clean fashion is not my strong suit. Let's start over. So I reached out to our pals over at Condo Blue for some assistance. Now they have some very clever camera cages and rig accessories that make this a pain-free process. 15mm to 12mm adapter. There you go. So now we just need to connect this onto here with power. I also reached out to Tilta because I'm a huge fan of their electronic DJI accessories. Now we sandwich this side in too. Like this transmission V-mount power plate that clamps around the wireless transmission and holds a V-mount brick on the back. Also, these Ronin 4D grip relocator cables allow me to use the monitor and grips like normal, but mount them at a more comfortable location on the rig, both of which make this rig much easier to configure. Now, I'll save the step-by-step for another video, but I'll just say this right now. This is leaps and bounds better than what I came up with on my own. Guys, this is coming together. We now have multiple face tracking, face lock, and LiDAR depth map. It's quite a leap from the tech from the single time of flight sensors, and it's obvious that DJI is tailoring this tech for more of their premium products. And because in order for this focusing tech to be accurate and dependable enough to use on set, it needs that level of firepower. While I started this video a little frustrated because I wanted that small, snappy, handheld autofocus rig, this is a much more intelligent, nuanced product, and it overcomes a lot of those frustrating limitations that those simple single point LiDAR autofocus modules that are hitting the market now are dealing with. Things like beam angle restrictions, having to be directly in front of the sensor at all times, and just not having any idea where the face is in the frame. I don't know that this system is meant for solo operators as it stands. You can do it, but there's one obvious trade-off, and to kind of hammer this home, I have to introduce to you DJI's wireless receiver. Now, this is essentially the same thing as a high brightness monitor, just without the screen. And they packed a few more goodies in here. So this standalone receiver works with the wireless transmission kit and Ronin 4D. Now it has the same O3 Pro system with automatic channel hopping and ridiculously long 20,000 foot range. And aside from it being a smaller version of the wireless monitor receiver with no screen and about double the battery life, it has a built-in dual SDI slot for Video Village, which on the wireless receiver, you have to pay an extra $450 for. The SDI allows you to output metadata from cameras like Arri and Red, and it also features fractional frame rates, which is an upgrade. So here we have the transmitter, and here we have the receiver, but we also now have this guy. So this, you can have unlimited number of those, and now we got Video Village. Aww. But the coolest part of the trick is the one overlooked by everyone, the built-in comm system. I'm gonna tape these to the microphone. You're gonna hear what it sounds like. All right, so here we go. Voice call is a way to communicate back and forth between RX and TX using a USB-C port and a set of ordinary USB-C earbuds. This is in addition to video and audio signal coming in from camera. So you can simultaneously be monitoring camera's audio in Video Village, but also you can be talking with camera operator just like its own comm system. And the kicker is the range is the same, which at 20,000 feet is a hell of a lot farther than most comm systems. The first time I tested this out, I was not really impressed with the range. The range only went about 75 feet. I will say the range is not too great on these. We are shooting through some trees here. And then I realized one dumb error I made.
When I rigged out that camera, I had both the transmitter and the high brightness monitor, the receiver, on the same rig within like 6 inches of each other. So essentially the signals were interfering with each other.
It's like it creates an echo chamber of interference. So now let's try it again with just the receiver.
Just gonna keep on walking until it cuts out. How good is it now? Now it's blocking the body. Now it's not blocking the body. It's not blocking the body, but there's a tree in the way now. And way the hell down the other side of my street.
I'm a moron, that worked way better. All right, so we're all over the place. To kind of recap this, voice talk feature on this, very underrated. I'm curious to know what happens if you buy multiple of these. Will it replace the entire comm system for camera department? If so, that's incredible. A lot of times on sets, frequencies can really get overcrowded and some comms can actually disrupt video feed. Having it all in one makes a whole lot more sense. The cable hub, definitely a no-brainer if you already have the transmission kit or the RS3 Pro or both. I feel like it's one firmware away from being perfect. This really is meant to be rigged out with a crew. Transmission and receiver on the same handheld rig definitely seems silly now. You can totally do it if you happen to, you're in store for a workout and signal strength is gonna be truncated to 75 feet.
Pleasure.
Thank you so much, brother.
Of course, man.
One last thing, did he do well?
I think he should apply next year. I'll put in a good word for you. Thank you.
No, you can still totally shoot handheld. This stays on the camera, then the transmitter goes in your back pocket, and then you run power and HDMI up to the camera. That was fun.